Hello everyone, today I'm going to be explaining how to add physics to your Unity game. So I have created here a bowling alley. So I'm going to put play and show what happens. Okay, so nothing happens. The ball doesn't move, everything stays still. So how do we change this? Well, to do this, we have to add colliders and we have to add rigid bodies. So let's start with the ball. We have here our bowling ball. We're going to the scene. And we're going to add to it a collider. So there are different kinds of colliders. You have all the 2D ones that here, if we're using a 3D project, you're not going to be using. And we have the 3D colliders that we have a box collider, a capsule, a sphere, and in this case, we will need a sphere collider. What this does is that it makes it work as if it was a sphere. So for the ball, we're going to add a sphere collider. Here it wrapped around it correctly, but you can edit if you want. You can edit the collider and you can make it bigger, smaller, as however you want. So we'll reset it and it looks okay. Perfect. Now we want the ball to hit the pins, right? So we're going to go to the pins and we can add colliders to it. So in this case, a pin matches more or less to what it is a box collider. So we'll add a box collider. Perfect. It is wrapping around it correctly, but also if you need to, you can change the sizes, just double clicking on the dots, or you can also change it with the center and the size here. It all depends. So we'll just keep it like that. Also, if you have a mesh well rendered, you can, for example, we can add a box. We have a box collider, but there's also a mesh collider, and it will adapt to the mesh you have already. So if it's a well done mesh, it will wrap correctly. So you just click convex, and here we have a nice mesh. Perfect. We'll keep that one. It looks good. Now, for example, here I have a prefab. So if you have prefabs and you don't want to be changing one by one to every single one, what you can do is to add it. Here you have a plus sign, so you can just click here and add component, apply to prefab, and now every single one will have it. Also, if you just go to your prefab, you can add it through this component. So you just add mesh collider and you will have your everything will be added to your prefabs. Perfect. So now we have the colliders done. Now if we go to the game, again, nothing happens. So what we did is only the collider. We have to add now that we want gravity to impact it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the bowling ball and add a rigid body. So rigid body. Don't add the 2D, add the one 3D if you're using 3D. Perfect. So we go to our scene. Oh, there we go. We go to our scene. We go to our bowling ball. And here you can change the mass, the drag. If you know about the drag, you can change it, angular drag. And here it's very important to have the use gravity checked. Perfect. You can also change constraints if you don't want it to move in the Y position. So if you don't want it to be able to move in this direction, then you won't permit it. If you constraint there, you can freeze it moving in the X position or in the S set position. In this case, we want it to move wherever we want. And you can also change you can also freeze the rotation. So if you don't want it to rotate in the y-axis, so if, for example, you don't want it to do this movement, then you won't permit it. Perfect. We'll just put everything in 0. Perfect. And now we have to also add, well, let me show you first what happens when we put play. So we go to the game, we play. Great. So now you see the ball falls, but you see everything here in the scene. You will see the ball moved, but it hit the pins, but the pins didn't fall. Why? Because we don't have the pins with a rigid body. So now let's add a rigid body to the pins. So now we can go directly to the prefab if we want. Go to the scene and let's make it 3D. Add a rigid body too. We'll keep the same mass. You can make it more or less. In this case, we just don't care that much. And here you'll see that now every single one has a rigid body. You see, every single one has a rigid body. Perfect. So now, if we go to the game and put play, so the ball falls and hits the pins and they fall. So that's how you do it. Goodbye.